So it's 2 minutes after 5 and just being respectful of everyone's time. This is a good neighbor meeting for Vantage Point Properties and 2.2 LLC. They submitted a rezoning request for 5.23 acres on the west side of Ranshaw, just south of West Cherry Street, and they are requesting a zoning. They already have commercial zoning. They are requesting a PAD to allow some flexibility with design as Jeff goes through some rehabilitation and building expansions. In case you didn't hear me, we have 2 good neighbor meetings tonight. This is the first one. Let me go to where the property is. We have a second one at 5:30 for the Fox Run Farm. So we are going to limit the discussion for the first half hour to this if it takes that long. We don't have separate logins, so this is the only login we have for both meetings. But I do ask that if you do have something to say, that you just limit the discussion to this item. And if you're not a presenter, I ask that you just put yourself on mute if you could. Okay. So just a little bit of background why we do this, and I have Nick Burgess with our communications office helping me out. As you can imagine, trying to manage all of this can get quite challenging, and as people kind of trickle in. So Nick, thank you for this. Jeff Schweitzer is here. He is the property owner representing this request. I'll give a brief introduction and kind of turn it over to Jeff, and then we'll open it up for questions. The point of this, these meetings are to allow applicant to share details of the application, ask questions, get any feedback prior to going from the planning commission. And we never like that someone comes to a planning commission and says, hey, I'm just here to learn more about this. You know, we kind of think there should be an opportunity before that. And hopefully the applicant, city staff can get some feedback of the request before actually going into that first meeting. So that's really the point of this. So it's really the first step in the process. We have a planning commission on the April 4th. I do believe I had a typo in the letter I sent out, so I apologize for that. But the planning commission is on April 4th. And then subsequent to that, city council would consider this request at 3 public meetings. So we value your public input. We want you to voice your opinion. But in order to be part of the public record, please submit it in writing, and email is just fine with me. I'll share my contact information in a minute. So how does zoning work? Okay, property has a zoning designation, allows for certain uses. If you're a commercial district, allows things like retail businesses, shops, those things, restaurants, individual parties, property owners, or people that have a contract for purchase can request a zoning to a different use. In this case, the request, as I mentioned, is to vary some of the design requirements that are in the city code. Okay, I don't, this has never been a problem for me, but I just feel like it's worth mentioning. Please listen respectfully, don't interrupt. We won't do that. Let's criticize ideas, not individuals. And please just we'll allow everyone a chance to speak. I kind of messed up a little bit. So we've got this little area to the front. If you do want to speak, just raise your hand, and then Nick will kind of go through and call out 3 people in a row just to kind of cue you up. We found that's probably the best way to do this. Certainly, if you object to a request, and these are just boilerplate, so bear with me. If your position is that you object to a proposed development, which is totally fine, that's your right. You don't necessarily need to state it here. You can certainly just send me an email of whatever comments that you have, or if you don't even feel comfortable speaking here, that's fine too. You're just welcome to listen. Just feel free to email me if you have questions or you want something as part of the public record. All emails that are sent to me are incorporated in the public record that the Planning Commission and City Council take a look at. Okay, before I turn it over to Jeff, this is the site plan that was submitted. Jeff, why don't you kind of go over the site plan, and then I'll move to the next, which is your renderings.
Thank you. So I'm Jeff Schweitzer, and this property, just to locate it for you, is just south of where Wigan Penn is. It is hoping to take a existing property that's been basically used for contractor condos or rentals in more recent years, and elevate it in terms of being able to offer more of the community and more of a retail setting, a little higher end finish to the property. So it has, obviously you look at the renderings there, you can see that it's going to be changing dramatically. It's just basically adding addition to the 965 facing side, and then 2 spaces at the rear of the property, adding additional parking, and trying to create an opportunity with some of the spaces that will be offered at a rate that's different than typical to 965. So there can be more of a spectrum offered for commercial space that's new, that isn't at a rate that's typical. Very minor, I guess, as far as a description, but more than happy to address any questions as far as the proposal for the pad, the PAD. It is this is an existing property that's been there since the early 70s. Has had some renovations over the years, but minor. This is taking kind of legacy code and trying to bring it forward to improve it. There are boundary issues with where existing buildings are. So it's 2 different, it looks like 2 different owners. It's the same owner. It's just a DBA. Vantage Point Properties is the same thing as 2.2. There is a border in between the 2 properties where it's too close to a building. That's one thing to consider. And then the second is just to be able to build the building as you see there, and have a variance to the design on the rears of the buildings that are between 2 as they're close together.
Yeah, and I would just add, this is Brian, city staff. So you've seen a lot of development, especially commercial development in the city. We require a minimum of 60% masonry on every elevation for commercial development, and that's on all 4 sides. And certainly, I think done a pretty good job in our community of making some nice looking buildings. Most of the commercial stuff you see has a high degree of masonry. But it is a little different with a greenfield site where it's all new construction. In this case, Jeff is taking, for all intents and purposes, a kind of a warehousey type building and rehabilitating it, similar to what Jeff did to the property to the north. That looks quite nice. You just get into these code requirements. Jeff and I have talked a little bit about the long-term vision of providing some flexibility in the code to encourage redevelopment or rehabilitation of existing building stock, because certainly tearing down this property and clearing it is a way different proposition than trying to rehab it. And Jeff's trying to hit, I think, a certain price point with rents, and you can't do that when you tear down buildings and build completely new. It's just not possible. So that the thing that we talked about was doing the planned area development in order to provide a cohesive plan to allow some waivers to it. I think setbacks were mentioned as well as some of the design criteria we have. Really, the commercial use of the property won't change. I think all intents and purposes will look a lot better than it does now. Jeff, I don't know if you mentioned the frontage road would continue.
Yeah, I was actually going
through.
Yep, send you back to that. So as far as I mentioned the north property, originally back in the early 80s, prior to that, this was all a single parcel, and was divided off, the single acre that was divided off, the 165 shown in that image. By improving the property to the south, the 165, utilizing the same brick, it'll make the entire parcel look more singular and with a single purpose, as opposed to being the narrow facing parcel to 965. It will tie together with the the northern, so it's a full, a little over 6 acres of ground. And also the connectivity between the two, where the driveway for what is now the plaza will tie in, and that frontage road will then connect over to the road that's in front of O'Reilly's. So you'll get better flow and just a more cohesive appearance to the from the curb appeal from 965.
So I think that covers introductions. Nick, can't tell if anyone's raised their hands, but I suspect maybe not.
I don't see anyone
Okay,
with
so
their
we'll-
hand raised for this project.
Okay, so I think with these, we kind of give people an opportunity. If you want to ask questions or make comments, this would be your opportunity now. I do see something from Amanda. Let's see here.
Amanda asks, what building numbers are included in the revamp?
So as you're, okay, so as you're looking there, are you referring, Amanda, I assume, to the aerial where you can see numbers? So looking at what we have there, it's the site plan. So just a reference point to see, those are square footages, but I can help you there, or else Nick can circle it. You see it says SF equals 1933 and SF equals 6137. It's that whole building that you'd see there that would be the primary, the one that would be most visualized from the road. And then to the rear on the that 5,000 square feet would be an addition. But every building would be touched and reskinned, at least from the front point, and basically brought up to a complementary appearance with all the other buildings around it. Did that answer the question that you're asking?
And let me
Yes,
just
thank
circle
you.
where that is on the aerial there.
Thanks, Amanda.
That's kind of down in this area here.
Yeah, and if you notice this summer, the plaza to the north where Wig and Penn is, the Colab and State Farm, all of that was, the exteriors were painted and kind of spruced up, I guess, if you will, and in kind of anticipation of this property being redeveloped on the south to kind of bring it together where it looks all of a singular appearance.
And then
A to Z is currently in this building, and they are building a new facility there at Ranshaw and 240. So that's the new construction that's happening up north a little bit.
Correct.
all right, then we did have a hand raised from Shelley. Shelley, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Great. I'm sorry, I don't understand what rezoning to PAD means. Can you explain that a little?
Yep, I will. So a planned area development is kind of a layer on top of a zoning. So the existing zoning here is commercial. That base zoning is going to change. And then a PAD, it's called different things in different communities. We call it a PAD, or a planned area development here, allows for some minor flexibility within the code, as long as you specify what that flexibility is on your site plan. And when you go through this type of process, you have a site plan attached to the rezoning. And so in this case, Jeff is coming forward with a plan and saying, you know, going through this process, this is what I'm telling you, this is the plan that's being approved, and it gets tied to the zoning. And so if just later on says, nah, I changed my mind, I want to do something completely different, you got to go back through the entire process, because that's not what was stated through the original process. So the flexibility that Jeff is looking for in this process is the masonry requirement, which is 60%. It doesn't always make sense, and I think you would probably see in this case where it's circled in red, the west boundary of that rear building. It can't really be seen by anybody, but from a code perspective, the code requires 60%. So when you get into a substantial rehabilitation of the property, you've got to adhere to that requirement. So I think Jeff's done some creative design techniques on the northern property, and so I think he's looking for a little bit of flexibility with respect to that. And I think there might be some setback waivers, particularly for that building that's along the west boundary, but that's pretty much the only changes that I'm aware of, Jeff, unless you can think of something else.
That's correct.
Shelley, did that answer your question?
I really appreciate it. That clarified a lot. I kind of think commercial or residential just because I'm a person who lives in a house.
Yeah.
I don't construction or anything.
Great.
Like I said, I don't think you'll notice a whole lot changing with the property. It'll still be commercial. I think you'll see different tenants in there, and I think overall, if this gets approved, I do think the property's going to look much nicer.
That's the goal.
Okay, so typically I'll give it one more and say, okay, is there anybody else that has any other questions? We'll give it last call. And if not, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to a close. Thank you for those who attended. Thanks for asking questions. So again, appreciate your feedback and participation in this.